was like, well, I think there might be some value in us being able to really talk, maybe even at a high level view, about what makes us different. There's a lot of different projects out there in a lot of different areas, and we all have the choice of what we're going to participate in or not. So what makes DebtBox different from everything else out there? If we're looking at this, call it basket of cryptocurrencies, right? And the different projects that fall underneath that category, there's some really, really cool, powerful things out there. Blockchain is redefining how almost every industry in the world operates. And there's a lot of good things that come from that technology. But just like anything else, when you got good, you also have the bad, right? There's a lot of projects out there that we need to be weary of. And a good example of this, and if you guys have your phones, and if they're not pointed at me, which is making me sweat a little bit, you can Google this key phrase, and what you're going to find is astonishing, okay? If you Google Uniswap and rug pull, you're going to see articles where people went in and they analyzed every single token that was listed on Uniswap. And you know what they found?
What's that?
97% of them were rug pulls.
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
That's horrible.
That puts an almost incomprehensible black eye on our industry.
Yeah.
And we, I mean, even though blockchain now is a decade plus years old, we are still considered the pioneers, right? We're still the boots on the ground that are trying to get these technologies implemented into everyday life. We have a responsibility, in my opinion. Sorry, they taped this thing here. To teach people and educate people. And that's another one of the beautiful things of this partnership with IX is you guys as direct sellers, you have the ability to sit down with people face to face on Zoom calls and really educate people as we go. And so what is the difference between this 97% and what we would consider good, okay? If you dig deeper into these articles, what they really kind of backed off of it because they're like, whoa, we don't want the government coming in and putting all these regulations. And so they kind of tried to redefine what they said. And they said, we identified several key points that perhaps lend these tokens to be more vulnerable for a rug pull. Not that they were rug pulls, but still, is that really any better? No. And so let's just kind of, unfortunately I don't have slides, and so this is where I got to kind of ad-lib, and I'm sure every attorney that we have on staff just kind of got the hair on the back of their neck standing up because they don't know what I'm going to say next. Like some weird legal, Jedi mind trick. Spidey sense, if you will. Most people that are new in crypto, they don't even understand what a rug pull is or how it's even possible. So I'm going to talk very, very generically. And in fact, I'm not even going to talk about crypto because I would love to stand up here and just start naming names, right? And tell you guys what's out there and what's bad. But I can't do that, so I'm going to talk in very, very, generic terms. And instead of calling it cryptocurrency, let's call it a widget. Does anybody know what a widget is?
Yeah, it's on the phone.
Well, that's about how much people know about blockchain when you first introduce them to it, right? They don't even understand the word. So we have widgets. And let's say that I want to take a widget to market. So I'm laying in bed one night and I, fall asleep on the couch. I wake up because my fluffy dog's licking me in the face, and I get this idea that I want to launch this new dog token or something.
Right.
Maybe I flew too close to the sun. I want to release this project. Okay, so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create an allocation of these widgets, and for the sake of being easy and simple and math, let's say I have 100 of them. Now I need to take these widgets and put them to the market. And there's all sorts of third-party exchanges where you can, conduct this type of commerce. Uniswap, PancakeSwap, several different other exchanges out there for widgets. And I have these 100 widgets, right? So now I need to create a market for these widgets. How do I do that? Well, the idea is that these widgets are all going to go out to people like you and me and get decentralized. And so you're going to have some widgets, you're going to have some widgets, you're going to have some widgets, you're going to have some widgets. Now, the problem with this is, if you don't know how many widgets are out there and who's holding on to these widgets, right? Because somebody else is steering the ship. So the more decentralized the projects get, the more secure they become. And so the more hands that are, these widgets get distributed into, the better off these projects can become. But here I am, and let's just say for the sake of ease that my widget is $1. Pretty easy math, $100 per widget. And let's say that there's some nefarious people that want to take advantage of this marketplace. Well, surprisingly, they don't need that many in order to have a huge effect. Maybe I buy 3 widgets, and Joe buys 3 widgets, and Jason buys 3 widgets, and Roy buys 3 widgets. And so there's 4 of us that are standing in this circle that all own a couple widgets. Those widgets are $1 in value. Now, what do we know about price and pricing of things? There's kind of an age-old saying that, well, the simple way to look at it is something's only worth what somebody else is willing to pay for it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it almost doesn't follow a supply and demand metric in some cases. See, we have this inherent ability that we don't want to miss out, right? We all have this kind of sensation, in ourselves where if we see something going really well, we want to take part of it. And sometimes that leads us to do some things without fully understanding what we're doing because the opportunity seems so good. So if I go back to my example, and I'm sitting here in the corner, and I've got 4 different individuals that all hold even just a small amount of these widgets, I go to Joe and I say, Joe, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to sell you my widget for $1.10. You're going to sell Roy a widget for $1.10. He's going to sell Jason a widget for $1.10. I'm going to buy a widget from him for $1.10. Well, the price of that, or the activity, gets picked up. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
And what happened? The price of that went up by 10%. Now, was there any other value added? No. It was just 4 guys that shuffled money. And when things really get askew is when we say, well, that worked out great, so the next round we're going to do it for $1.25 and $1.30 and $1.50 and $1.80 and $2 and $4 and $5. And all this is just fake money moving around in a circle.
Right.
But the person over here that bought his widget for $1 logs onto his phone and says, holy smokes, this thing's worth $4. I better buy some more. Now, he doesn't understand what metric took it from $1 to $4. They just see the price going up. And they have such a fear of missing out, 400% increase in value. Like, I want more of these things. And so they start buying more, And over here, the 4 of us are sitting here like, shmee, because you guys are now buying the tokens that we bought for $1 for $4 or $5. We pull all of our money out. And then the market does something that's kind of crazy, or it's actually what it should do is it corrects itself. Mm-hmm. Because the value of that widget was never more than $1. Never should have been more than $1. But only because of public perception, based on things that were going on behind the scenes, did the value of that almost fictitiously in a way increase. And once eventually that has to stop, because somebody's going to say, well, $10 for this widget, what is it? As much as I like little fluffy dogs, what value am I buying here? And so the market goes, the floor comes out from underneath it. These guys walk away with a bunch of money, and everybody else is left holding the bag, right? And we've seen it over and over and over again. The crypto industry is so powerful, but it does have its negative things. So we got to educate people, right? So what led to those different vulnerabilities? What can we look at and pinpoint and say, how can we fix this? How can we make this more difficult? How can we be more transparent? How can we add value to make sure that that doesn't happen? So now let's come over here to what we have created. Every coin that exists in every one of our projects had to be mined. It's what we call our fair launch protocol, meaning there's not some room full of debt council members, there's not a room full of programmers and developers that are holding mountains of this token behind the scenes. We mined it just like you guys did. We're on a fair, even playing field. Now, some of us may have more licenses than others, but again, the process is we all mine equally. Now, what that leads to in some of our projects is almost a delay, because people ask like, well, why isn't your project listed on this exchange, immediately? Because no token exists. When we launch a project, the mining begins and we start at 0. So we have to wait a little bit of a time in order for us to accumulate enough token to even take it to the open market. Like Binance, for example, is going to require us to place, do you know what the number is? $2 million worth of token. And $2 million worth of liquidity on the other side to match it. Well, how do I do that if I don't have $2 million worth of token? If $2 million worth of token is even created yet.
Right.
So there is always a little bit of a delay from the start of the project to minting it. But understand what's going on in the background. So when people ask you, well, why is that the case? The simple fact is the token has to be created. Okay? That's very different than what goes on over here in our initial widget offering, where we just create a billion token out of nothing. We allocate it however we want, right? There's a difference there. Now, the other thing that we've done in our tokenomics is we have implemented a tax. Now, everybody at some point in time is going to look at that tax and get really frustrated, right? Like, who wants to spend 10% to move token from here to here? Has anybody looked at that? Has anybody been afraid to withdraw the money from the piggy bank because the number goes down a little bit? But understand the importance of why that's there. That is there so that this transaction can't happen. Because the second I start moving token between me and my buddies to try to inflate a price, I lose 10% every one of those exchanges. I'd be broke in a day. So let them do it. Because that 10% in some way or another comes back to you. So we punish the people that are the nefarious players and give that back to the community. And we do that by dividing that tax. And it's different for every project, but some of that goes purely to liquidity in some of the projects, which helps you guys, right? Some of it goes back into our EGI pool, which then gets remined back to you guys. And some of it gets burned. Now, how many of you guys heard of a burn before Debtbox? There's a few tokens out there that have implemented it. And the reason why people implement a burn is because it constantly shrinks the supply of the token that's out there. Now let's get into the real basics of economic theory, right? Supply and demand. Everybody heard that?
Yeah.
In fact, most of us have got a real world lesson of that over the course of the last 2 years, right? As COVID has struck and supply chains have gotten, backed up, supply of certain goods and services have shrunk down. And what has that done to the price of those goods and services? Has anybody bought eggs lately? Holy cow.
Eggs.
I swear, a couple years ago, you could go to the grocery store and buy 5 dozen for like $6. The other day, it was like 24.
Wow. What? It's crazy.
Bird coin. Coming. No, I'm just kidding. So we understand this metric of supply and demand. We've seen it play out in every aspect of our lives throughout every time frame in history. When you correlate supply and demand with price, you can almost predict the behavior of what's going to happen, right? So if you have high supply and high demand, the scale is even, the price stays stagnant. If you have low supply, low demand, the scale is stagnant, the price stays even. If you have high supply, low demand,
the price goes down.
The trajectory tends to go down. And when you have low supply and high demand, the price goes up, which is what we've all experienced. That's what the entire kind of tokenomics of all of the Debtbox projects are all about, supply and demand. So what we do is we have a set amount of token that will enter the ecosystem. It's different for every project because the way that the token is created is different in every project. So go to the BizPro app and download the white papers, and you can kind of see how all of these different tokens function. But the idea behind it is now you have a set pool, right? Now some coins out there will hire like a celebrity endorser, to come and again try to convince people that this is what they should do. And again, that will have, FOMO kicks in, and we all want to jump on the bandwagon, and the price goes up. The celebrity pulls all his money out, and the price goes down. And when you guys are looking at that screen and you're seeing those candlesticks go up, everybody's excited, right? When you see those candlesticks go down, everybody gets sick. What if we could create a way that when the candlesticks go down, you're almost more excited than when the candlestick goes up?
That's right.
That is a total reverse in logic of what most things out there are, right? Now let me explain how that works. Debt is the exception, but behind every project, there is a real world asset generating company project behind the scenes that is signed on to royalties with Debtbox. Those royalties are collected and put into a trust. That trust has one function and one function only, and that is to buy that token out of a third-party ecosystem, store it, and burn it. So that it never gets taken. Now, if you understand that burning token decreases, the supply, then inherently the burning of token over time will increase the value.
Yes.
So if I have a royalty coming in every month, would I rather that royalty burn 100 token, or would I rather that royalty burn 1,000 token?
1,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
So I'm not sitting up here saying that we just want the price to go like this. That's not the idea. But if there was ever a situation where we had a mass sell-off, or we had, what most would consider like a rug pull scenario, where that candlestick goes way down, let's say BGLD, for example, everybody that was holding BGLD just says, I want to sell, I want to sell, I want to sell, and the price goes down to 6 zeros and a 1. The very next month, a royalty comes in. Now that royalty has no purpose other than buying token. It's not to make a profit. It's not emotional.
No.
It's just robotic. Those trust companies cannot sell a single token. They can't manipulate the market in any way, shape, or form. They can only buy and burn, buy and burn, buy and burn.
B&B.
So if everybody were to sell, and I am the lonely guy out here that just held my one BGLD, token price goes down, royalty comes in and just swoops everything, right? Sends it to the burn wallet. The very next month, the royalty comes in. And let's say that royalty is $100. And there's only one token left. The royalty has to buy my token.
At the value.
It has to.
Wow.
So we all get excited when the markets are reacting, especially the way they are the last couple of days. Anybody been paying attention?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in the scenarios where we get in the back office and we look at these candlesticks going down, Jason and I, when we were in Africa and we were looking at BGLD, we were smiling, even though it was down by 5, 10, 15%, because we knew what was going to happen. So it allows for this perfect kind of synergy, because we have all different types of people that have all different types of goals in their life, and they have all different types of needs. So for the people that want to, sell immediately to generate some instant value, it's there. You can do that. You can do it on a daily basis. You can do it up to millions and millions and millions of dollars. The liquidity's there. For those of us that want to hold, we like it when these guys sell, because guess what happens? Some of that is going to this royalty and it's getting burned, which ultimately increases the underlying value of what we are holding on to.
Yeah.
Because at some point in the future, it's not going to be this year, it may not be next year, it may not be 10 years from now, 100 years, I don't know. But if you guys pay attention to the royalty burns that we announced in the back office, I think BGLD last month was a couple $1 million.
Yeah.
I want to be the guy holding the last pot of tokens that are worth a couple $1 million.
Say that.
Right? Like that's not going to happen tomorrow, but over the course of time, as this thing burns and it burns and it burns and it burns,
Wow.
and supply is going shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking,
Gave you a few.
and the DAT council behind the scenes is adding new project, new project, new project, new project, new royalty, new royalty, new royalty, new royalty. What's happening is the supply is going down and the demand is going way up.
Oh, yeah.
And this is completely outside the traditional means of commerce. Because we're still going to have people outside of DebtBox that want to buy and hold our token and do exactly what they're doing with Ethereum and Bitcoin and this and that. And so we have the best of both worlds. We have short-term possibilities, we have long-term possibilities. The other part is we have an annual halving. I think BGLD, well, we'll talk about that specifically when we're talking about BGLD. But every year, the EGI pool, does anybody understand how the EGI pool works? Okay, let me just give you kind of a high-level explanation of what's going on here. So every license that gets activated, a certain amount of token, it gets created and put into our Ecosystem Growth Initiative pool, which is our EGI pool. That EGI pool gets divided by 4,000 days. So if there's 4,000 token in the EGI pool, it gets divided by 4,000 days. One token comes out and it goes and it gets distributed amongst every single license that's on the system, even. As long as you're participating and your license is running for the full day, you'll get the equal share of that. But guess what happens tomorrow? 1/4,000 of that EGI pool gets distributed. What happens the day after that? 1/4,000 of that EGI pool gets distributed the day after that. So when we use the term perpetual license, we mean perpetual license. We have heard a lot of people say, well, these licenses will last for 10 years because 4,000 days is just over 11 years, and maybe easier to say 10. But honestly, these licenses will run until the end of time. I mean, eventually, they may only mine such a small fraction of an amount, but they may not be worth the hosting and on all that decades down the line. But these things will run for a long period of time. They're designed that way. It's a perpetual license. Now, what else is out there that provides us that opportunity? Has anybody ever mined Bitcoin? A couple people here? We used to do that a lot. I don't know what they're going for today, so don't quote me on this, but probably a good Bitcoin miner is going to run you $8,000, $9,000. Okay? It's a big hunky thing. Consumes an enormous amount of electricity. And then produces the value. So you buy this Bitcoin miner, you ship it off to a third-party hosting company, you pay the hosting fees, you pay the power bills, and at the end of the day, you end up with what? Probably $3 to $5 a day. Total profitability on a Bitcoin miner. Okay? Now that goes up and down, and depending on how close you are to halving and all of that, but that's kind of what we have averaged over the years that we have done, $3 to $4 a day. But that Bitcoin miner, see, technology advances at such a rapid rate, and some of these tokens, you know, the competition is so fierce that that miner will probably have a shelf life of maybe 18 to 24 months, if you're lucky. So you're spending all of this money to make $3 to $4 a day, to have all of this risk, just to have a paperweight in 2 years that's worth nothing. Or you can have a perpetual license. I always joke with people, Jason, I've heard him say this too, if you want the most profitable Bitcoin miner on the planet, buy a license. And just take it at the end of every day and convert it into Bitcoin. You just created the most profitable Bitcoin miner out there.
Nice.
Very true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
If you like Ethereum, same thing. If you like, I mean, this is the freedom that you guys have, is the ability to choose what you guys want to participate in. We hope that it's DebtBox, but look, there's other good projects out there, and you should be well diversified. And so use what we're doing here to diversify yourself to create something for your future. It's kind of crazy. So we have this beautiful function of the burn. That burn comes from royalties. Now, you did hear me say royalty. Did I say ownership?
No.
No. We said royalty. We are a royalty acquisition company. Our purpose out there is to continually add royalties to our ecosystem. Why royalties? Does anybody understand how royalties work? The way that royalties work is when money comes in, a royalty comes off the top. The rest of it then goes into a business operating account where they have to pay for all of their expenses, all of their payroll, all of this, all of that. And that's where you get the difference between gross and net, right? The royalty comes off the top. Now, do I care if I'm getting a royalty, what the expenses of that company are?
No.
No. I get paid first.
Right.
Do I want the liability of running hundreds of different companies?
No.
No. Companies go like this. Cash flows go like this. We don't want to be susceptible to that. We want royalties. We are a royalty acquisition company. Have you guys heard any other businesses out there that have a model similar to that?
Uber.
Airbnb. Uber. How many taxi cabs does Uber own?
0.
How many royalties do they collect off of taxi cab drivers?
Right.
Millions.
Yeah.
Now, do they care? Does Uber care if you're driving a Honda Civic versus a BMW? No. Do they care whether you only drive 2 hours a week versus 8 hours a day? No. Because their basket of royalties is what their bottom line is. That is a beautiful business model. Technology allows us to do that and play in this arena. And so we are a royalty acquisition company. We want to be the largest oil company in the world without owning a single
Right.
oil well.
Very well. Yep. That's
We want to be the largest agricultural player in the world without owning a single seed. We want to be the largest producer of precious metals and elements without owning it. I mean, doesn't it make more sense that way?
Oh yeah.
Let's just collect royalties off of all of it.
That's it.
And the way that we participate in those royalties is by buying a license.
That sounds impossible, Jake.
You can come up here later and explain it. So what makes us different? Rather than focus on the principles of something is worth what somebody else will pay for it, it's purely a supply and demand. Because we know that over the course of time, that's what creates value, supply and demand. So it's decreasing supply, increasing demand constantly. Everything we as the Debt Council do is based on that. How can we decrease supply, increase demand on every one of these projects? So every year, you're going to see more and more and more and more. And so when somebody says, well, I want to audit the books of this oil well. First of all, do I own that oil well?
No.
No. Do I care if their profitability goes up or down?
No.
No. I get paid first.
Yeah.
You guys, by participating, get paid first. And you do that through participating in the blockchain and earning rewards. Those rewards are a digital reward that is convertible to other digital rewards that are convertible to fiat currency. That make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Fire.
Okay.
Fire.
Now, we talked a little bit about this. Truly, guys, 2023 for us, we have some huge, huge, huge goals. IX has some huge goals. They're not unobtainable. You know how easy it would be for IX to go from 200 million to 400 million? One of my mentors taught me this. He says, what if everybody in this room just went out and found one more person to do what they did? One more. He used the term, each one, reach one. Each one, reach one. You guys leave today. If everybody in IX left today and went out and got one more person to do exactly what they did, you went from 200 to 400 million. I think we can do better.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Brilliant.
we can do that.
Doing that
And we're going to provide you guys the product suite to allow you to take advantage of that. And so we have some really, really fun products that we're going to talk about. We're going to do a couple minutes on each one of the projects. We want to give you guys a little bit of an update on how we think we're doing. So we're going to start, I think, with Grow. Do I have any Grow license holders out here?
Yeah! Cinderella!
You guys want to know what's going on behind the scenes of Grow?
Yeah!
No, I'm just kidding. Okay. This is Joe's fault. He's the one that went out of it.
All right, guys, I am very, very happy to be here. We're with one of the Box council members, Shad Brannon, and very happy. I know a lot of people that get involved in Box over the last 3 to 6 months. We've been so focused on BGLD, NatG, gas and oil, and all these crazy hype up things. And I think, at least for me, one of the projects that I love and I'm most passionate about has been Grow. And we talk about debt and what it stands for. I want to talk about that E, eco-friendly. So, Shad, can you share a little bit about kind of the work you guys are doing out here in Ghana right now? We're in Ghana, so it's the best time to do it.
Yeah, sure. So appreciate that, Joe. So the eco-friendly not only stands for the virtual digital mining that we do that doesn't draw the same power as an ASIC chip miner, right? So we don't get painted with that unfortunate brush of having a large carbon footprint, but it even goes deeper than that, right? It pierces through all the way to our project. So everything that we do, we try to be as eco-friendly as we possibly can. Obviously, the world is headed into a more, carbon conscious state, right? Where we can lower emissions and do things more efficiently. So we try to bring technology to everything we do. So for instance, for Grow, a lot of people say, well, what technology is involved in farming?
Yeah.
But, what a lot of people don't understand is that, you need water to farm. So our satellite technology not only can identify where, hydrocarbons are, where natural gas is, where the rare earth minerals are, but we can do water surveys. And so partnering with Minat here in Ghana, there are some remote, large tracts of land that it's just not economically viable to stretch irrigation canals all the way up to those lands. So we can do water surveys and find where we can drill water wells so that they can use groundwater to be able to irrigate the lands and then conduct more growing opportunity for larger crops, larger distribution, feed more people, and increase the royalties that come to the Box ecosystem.
That's awesome. And then another aspect of that, and we talked about this a little bit last night, but we're out here, we're on the farm, and starting to build out infrastructure. When you bring in infrastructure, what does that do for the locals, the local economy here as well?
So by using our technology and using our resources, we start to affect the trickle-down effect of the ecosystem. So where there's farming, there creates jobs. And where there's jobs, then it creates, salaries for people to spend their money. And so the locals, then it starts to trickle down into, those support systems. So the convenience stores, the bodegas, and the support systems. And this particular site that we're on now is a local kind of resort that they're building for some of the farmers when they're on their off time, so they can come and relax near the lake and kind of have a higher quality of life. So really we permeate all the way into the communities in which we have projects and operate. And so we're really affecting not only the ecosystem, but we're raising the quality of life for the communities that we operate in.
And guys, that's what I think is probably one of the best things, and it's probably one of the most underspoken things. We don't hear about it that much, but I do want to highlight it. I've been talking about Grow for the last 6 months. I think it was down at about 13 cents when I started talking about it. At the time of this recording, it's sitting at about 98 cents per token. So there's been some phenomenal growth in that as well. But Shad, I want to thank you for the opportunity to bring all the team out here and get to talk to the guys and see the certifications, guys. Maybe that's the last thing. Let's really just talk about the co-op that Manat is putting together.
Yeah, so Manat has organized a farming co-op of artists and farmers. So what we're also doing is we're using technology, biometric technology, and applications on smartphones to register all the local farmers into larger co-op groups, so that we can do seed purchases in bulk, so that they can have a higher yield on their higher return on their yield when it comes harvest time. So all these efficiencies and all these things that streamline their process end up in the people's,
And so all that's listed in the light paper too. If you go and look at it, lighten the burden on the explorer or the farmer in this case, right? Cut cost and be able to bring a higher return to everybody involved. So
as of today, according to the press, the world population hit 15 billion. I'm sorry, 8 billion today. And so there's more agricultural products needed. We need to feed the world. So Grow is helping do all that.
awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And guys, we'll see you on the next video.
So Joe kind of mentioned this earlier. There are two totally different sides of the debt box. There's the digital that we're all familiar with, and then there's the physical. And if you guys understand, how many of you guys, there's people in the room that made it to Ghana? Not a few people I know. Look around the room, talk to these guys that went out there and actually saw these properties, saw these lands. And some people ask us, well, why Africa? There's multiple different reasons. Number one, Africa is such a beautiful country that's so rich in resources. The soil out there is so incredibly, lush with nutrients that you can kind of throw a seed and it'll just grow whatever you want to do. So when we're looking at different communities to increase the production of, sustainable foods, it's the most logical place to go. The other thing is the people out there. It's a really unique situation because the people out there really want to work. They want to have something to better their lives. And so people ask, well, what do you guys do to, invest in these different companies? We're just bringing them technologies to refine their systems. And so Shad touched on that. By organizing all of these farmers together through a co-op, it helps organize their lives. It helps organize the purchasing power for seeds and everything else, which drives down costs. But ultimately, it provides jobs to the locals. It's a win-win-win. So I want to bring up one of our physical side of the Debt Council, Roy Nelson. Come on. And before we get going, the people that were in Africa, if you guys can raise your hands again, how much fun was it to be in Africa?
Yeah!
How would you like to spend a year there?
Yeah! I love Ghana. I'm going back.
Ghana's amazing.
Yeah.
And we love it there. But the amount of sacrifices that the physical side of our team has spent, just being away from their families, being away from, here in U.S. soil, everything that's familiar to them. They've made so many sacrifices for the benefit of us at Debtbox, as you guys as the community. So I would really appreciate you giving them a round of applause. Is it on? Give it a mic check.
Can you hear me?
A little bit. No, it's not on.
It's not on. It says on.
Okay.
Change the password. You forgot to put it to it.
That is.
Joe, I'm having trouble logging in.
Now I think that.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Jake's not wrong. We spend a lot of time away from home, and I'm going to steal the moment here for just a second. But Shad, could you stand up? Shad has missed so many birthdays, Christmases, Thanksgivings, and stuff away from his family. And on Monday, it's his birthday. So can we sing him happy birthday?
Wow.
Ready?
Yeah. Let's do it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chad. Happy birthday to you. Yeah.
You might pay for that one.
Oh, I'm sure I'm going to get that one later, but it's Jason's fault. Jason, can you stand up? I want to introduce you guys to somebody that's very back of the house. Jason is over processes, process management, and project management. The guy's incredible. He's a math whiz, and so he helps us keep things straight. But most of the time he goes unseen and unheard. And even when he tells us to do stuff, sometimes we don't listen to him. And we should. But if you can give him a round of applause too.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the physical side of Grow, what's going on over there. We have stuff here domestic but foreign as well. That obviously plays the biggest part. What are we growing out there?
So we're growing a number of crops. Soybeans is a significant crop over there for us because Manat, the partnership that we've been able to put together with Manat and to derive the royalties from Manat's work. You guys know who the FDA is. They're not easy to work with. They're very difficult. If you want to get something approved through the FDA, it takes a long time. These guys spent over 4 years doing the same equivalent to the to Europe, to the EU, to get certified so that their crops would be considered organic, which is phenomenal. And so, in going through that process, they are registered as strictly organic in a number of the crops that they grow. Soybean is one of them, and so their exit, yeah. First in West Africa. Thanks, Chad. They're the first in West Africa to be certified organic. And so some of the crops that are being grown over there that we're able to participate in a royalty from are soybean, rice, cocoa, shea, and you guys, the ladies probably more than the guys know what shea's all about, right? It's in shampoo, it's in all cosmetics, so it's a significant part. And the interesting thing about the shea is it only grows in certain regions, and that certain region is in West Africa. And it's just a small band, and that's it. It doesn't grow anywhere else in the world, yet it's in every product that you put on your body, lotions, makeup, hair products. So that's what we're growing over there. And those who have been able to go over to Africa can see some of the difficulty that it takes for them to grow. There's difficulties just in moving around the country from point A to point B. It's a significant effort to do that. When we were there, one of the interesting things, Jake, that you see is there were a lot of farmers that actually didn't have work. They couldn't grow. They didn't have the lands to grow on, so they were doing nothing. And in the video that you guys saw a minute ago, the camera kind of went into a hut, and there were a couple guys up top that were clapping, right? Caleb, you remember that. So Caleb was in that meeting. There was very few people. We actually went in to see the chief of that land. And it was a very incredible experience. Wouldn't you agree?
Amazing. Life-changing.
They, because of us showing up and providing the technologies that we're providing to increase the production, they gave more land to the people to grow on.
Yeah.
It was incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And so...
Not a small amount of land. Either.
Oh, no, it was...
10,000 acres they granted at that moment when we were there meeting with them.
Isn't that incredible?
10,000
Right there in the...
Wow.
They were actually afraid of Caleb.
Yeah, they were afraid of Caleb.
Who is it?
Who brought the tree?
And so in addition to bringing these different technologies to just help, them organize to create a more profitable system for themselves, of which we can now participate in, we also look at individual crops that they're growing and how to refine that process to maybe give them a higher yield out of the crops that they're already growing. And one of the big examples of that is the cocoa plant, right?
Exactly. So the cocoa plant, what's interesting about the cocoa plant is there is a consortium over there that controls the sale of cocoa. And that consortium that controls that sale of cocoa doesn't pay as much for cocoa if it's just the raw cocoa. And they control the influx. There are some of the large companies that you guys are familiar with that you'll find chocolate on the shelf. They don't pay a very high amount of cocoa either, for the cocoa. And then they export it. And you can see in the slide here, the export is a significant export. I mean, it's $1.8 billion. That's huge. Per year. It's massive. But when they're able to take and process some of that cocoa, you'll see that there's a significant amount of available funds that can come back to that farmer. So the interesting thing is when we were over there, and those who visited with us, they were able to see kind of a little bit of the process, but the process is kind of a long process. In order for them to get a cocoa tree to maturity, to be able to produce, is 5 years. And so in that process, what they will do is, as it grows, they'll get maybe 2 growth cycles in a year. That's it. And they grab these in number 2 here, you'll see they pull the pods off and then they break those pods open. And some of us had the opportunity to taste it. It tastes really interesting. It's very sweet, has kind of a meat on the seed. But they'll take it and they'll spread them out in number 3 on these banana leaf, and they'll let them dry in the sun. And it stinks. It smells horrible. And then they'll go back through and they start flaking the meat off, as you'll see in number 4, and they just continue to sun dry it, sun dry it, sun dry it, sun dry it. It takes a long time. Then they'll package them up, and they'll get them prepared to go to market. They'll roast them in 8, and the interesting thing is it pretty much stops at that point when it gets shipped from number 5 into number 7 there, into the plant.
That's where the local people, that's where they're done.
That's where they're done. But because we've been able to bring things over to Ghana to be able to process that, they can get double what they would make just by producing and growing the crop. And by bringing that consortium together with Manat, it's phenomenal because they help process that product and then turn that around.
So,
There's no chance of an individual farmer being able to afford think about it.
Oh, yeah, the interesting thing is these farmers, most of them live in a little shack. And when I say a shack, sometimes just kind of a lean-to. And that's where they sleep. And the torrential rains that they take over there, it's crazy. But they could never afford to buy a piece of equipment like this. In fact, most of them have inherited this land that they're growing on generation after generation after generation after generation. And so as they get this land and as they cultivate this land and grow these trees, that's all they've got. It's very meager.
Box provides the opportunity for
Yeah, and so interestingly enough, right now, Box is providing these opportunities for them in this growth because we're bringing this technology. One of the other technologies that we are working on right now is, who knows what happens in a crop if you overwater or underwater? It does the same thing, right? Just looks a little different. It dies. And if you have a complete crop that is gone, and you lose. And so when these guys, all they have is a crop, they don't have a side gig. There's no place to have a side gig over there. They're in the middle of the jungle growing their crops.
Yeah.
Some of the technology that we're bringing is water sensing technology. So they can know, do I need to water? Do I not need to water? What's the situation? Are we too arid? Are we going to have a problem? Do we need to go get water?
That's awesome.
So some of these other technologies for scanning and finding the water through Explore, which you guys are familiar with, we can determine how do we best help them gain water in a local area, and then they'll also be able to determine, do we not water as much, do we water more, so we can get a higher yield, yet again increasing what they have available to sell. Yet again, taking it and having it processed to be increased again so that they hold more back for themselves, which increases and changes their life and their lifestyle. So it's phenomenal.
And that's really what the physical side of debt is out there doing, is they're analyzing these different systems of production and really understanding that what an opportunity there is in taking these different things from an analog to a digital kind of thing. When you have when you guys see all of the man hours that go into some of these simple processes and the amount of benefit that we can bring to them by introducing them to relatively simple technologies, we can almost double their bottom line and double their living.
Absolutely. In fact, when we were there, you could see that most of the cultivation that takes place is by hand. And what I mean by hand, hoeing like for real hard labor in the sun. And it was hot. Man, it was hot.
And their tools are not really what we...
No, yeah. In fact, a lot of the tools are formed from tree branches and things like that. So having the ability to have equipment that allows them to till or provides, a combine to them is like, oh my gosh, what is this amazing piece of equipment? We take it for granted here. That's the interesting thing, is that when you haven't had an opportunity to be there, to see it, to understand the difficulty in the movement, the difficulty in procuring anything, it's nothing like we have here. We are so blessed here in the United States and most of the first world countries to not even have to think twice about those things. Yeah. And for them, it's a daily grind, daily struggle to get up, to get a crop in the ground, or maintain the crop, or harvest the crop.
And so by going out into Africa under the Grow Project, we're allowing people to co-op themselves, co-op their efforts, which gives them a better standard of living. It increases the take-home pay. The average person or family in Ghana makes
maybe $100 a month.
Maybe $100 a month. I think when we were out there, one of our people was talking to a doctor there in Accra. You know what a doctor makes in Ghana? It was like $3,000
$3,000 a month?
A doctor.
Now, he's a good doctor. You don't want to go to the bad doctor.
And so by introducing these different technologies, we are making a difference in the lives of the people that are there. And that's very, very apparent.
Jay, one of the things that I loved about the team coming together here is that we take a look at real life, everyday problems and then try to figure out how do we solve that. And it's not for us. I'm not a farmer. I could kill any plant you give me, and I'm good at it. And so being able to take a look at the efficiencies of those, which requires an entire team, and then planning and saying, how can we solve this real world problem for this group of individuals? And that's really what we do well. And that's why we're able to gain the royalties, because if we can go in to a scenario and say, look, we can help you double your yield and then double it again, there's plenty of meat on the bone then to say, hey, can we have a royalty if we can do that?
Yeah.
Small little piece.
Yeah.
And by the way, you got a whole bunch of friends. You want to bring them to have a conversation, because if we get a whole bunch of them, and you guys know in network marketing, I would totally rather have 1% of 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own.
Absolutely. And that's what's happening out here, even within the physical side, is this first property we went to, Shad, how big was it? Yeah. 11,000 hectares is underneath the co-op that pays us now. But also what's happening is, because we've done such a good job in the community, these chiefs are talking to their counterparts in other parts of the country. And so we're already being approach to constantly expand these different programs. And eventually what's going to happen is we're going to grow from Ghana into some of the surrounding countries around that. And just like you can see on a map, it's just going to expand and expand and expand. And isn't that okay? If we help you guys make a little, we can take a little, and it helps everybody. It's a win-win-win-win-win-win.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Shad spent the most time out there. Is there anything that you want to add to what we said, or
There's other countries, other chiefs knocking on.
people are knocking?
Yeah.
So Joe, I'm looking at the time here. Do we want to take our first break?
Yeah, I actually want to get this turned on. So I want to make a plug here. So really quickly, how many of you guys are already involved in Grow?
Yeah.
I know Deadbox put out an announcement yesterday, day before. Nat G is sold out.
Yep.
Debt is sold out.
Yep. Don't say it. It's like,
I have less than 200 licenses available for
Okay.
Grow, and then we're sold out. So if you want to get your hands on the last little bit of Grow, because you're starting to see this process is here, you might start to understand it better on what we're actually doing and be more involved in the carbon conscious, eco-friendly aspect of Deadbox. Get your license today. I guarantee they'll probably be gone before the weekend. So with that, that's all I got. I think the next slide is actually breaking.
One more thing. Going back to a little bit of the digital side of things, just to show you guys where we're at. As far as Deadbox, we're sold out of Grow. So Joe has the last remaining little bit. Grow is going to go through its annual halving here coming up. And if you guys have paid attention to what DET and what BGLD have done, because both of them went through their halving here in January, we're very, very excited about the future momentum that Grow is going to carry with us. The other side of this that's kind of not talked about as much is what is the goal of these tokens? Eventually, we want them to be recognized as full-on currencies, right?
That's right.
And part of that is getting different vendors to accept the Grow token as a form of payment.
Yeah.
And so coming very, very soon, you are going to see we have multiple vendors. We're going to start obviously rolling these out over the course of time that have actually agreed to start taking Grow as currency.
wow.
And
Let's
we're going
go.
to list those on the website. It's super exciting, and that's going to go into
Yeah,
Huge.
it's very exciting.
Huge.
So I think from there, we're going to take a little bit of a break, retape our microphones, and we'll be back in a little bit. Thanks, guys.
Man, I told y'all, look, this is next level, okay? We're gonna take a little break here. I'm pumped up. I'm gonna go back live again as soon as we go back live. Mike, you got something for him?
Just getting started, baby.
Just getting started.
Good stuff hasn't even happened yet.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, facts.
Give a round of applause, guys, to everybody.